perfect.
Right on. Oh, it doesn't do the thing. Hang on a second. Let me paste that better. Paste as plain text. I don't know why it's got to be like that sometimes. Well, welcome everybody. We are here. This is an exciting show. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention on good old X, but there is this account, Deities and Decrees, and I think it's time to pull back the curtain. There's just been too much mystery. Who is behind these guys? Mr. Gelatinous Rube joining us tonight. What's going on, man?
How's it going? How's your day going?
Are you the one? Are you the mastermind behind this?
I wouldn't say the mastermind. I feel like it's just something that's fun to do. We like
It's us. It's
going
both of
around
us. We're the ones. We're the ones. And one other
yeah,
guy.
we
One other
are
guy
masterminds.
who couldn't be here tonight because he is indisposed. He is working the graveyard shift. So I don't know. Should we say his name or shall we keep that a mystery for later?
A mystery? No, we could say it's Crom.
It's Crom. It's Doomstone Crom is the
Yeah, it's
third
Crom.
member.
Great.
So what the heck? What is going on with this? And while you start to explain it, maybe I can pull up some of the posts from this account. And,
Yeah, so Deities and Demigods it spawned out of a desire to do like another Dungeon 25 or Hex 24 or something like that. You know, there was a trend back in 2023, Dungeon 23, make
yeah,
a room of a dungeon every single day.
that's right.
And I tried to do Hexplore, Hexcrawl 24. Some people stuck with it, very few. They did it a lot better than I did. I got no traction on it, so I was like, all right, kind of gave up there. And then this year, I wanted to see if there was something that was similar we could do for Braunsteins. And
Yeah.
we asked B-dubs. This was the genesis of it. Is we asked B-dubs like, "Hey, I feel like we need B-dubs input. What would be a cool thing to do?" He's like, "I've never commented on I've never commented on like the Hexplore Dungeon 23 stuff because I thought it was dumb."
Right. Well, okay, so
Like,
it started in, was it 23 was Dungeon 23, right? And that was oh, what's his name? Was it Luke Gearing or one of those OSR like
yeah, that sounds
creators?
right.
Man, I'm kicking myself. Somebody in the chat, definitely, if
PDF
you guys
versions.
could post the name of the guy that started Dungeon 23. But basically, the idea was every day you create a room, and by the end of the year, you will have populated your own mega dungeon. And it took over. It was a great idea. It was a typical, well, it wasn't typical, but it followed the path of one of your New Year's resolutions, right? Like everybody got excited. I don't know how long it lasted, but there were some people that like kept with it and are like still doing it. Talented artists. But the next year after Dungeon 23 was Hexplore 24, where instead of rolling up a random dungeon or creating it via your own je ne sais quoi, they were going to do an overland hex using the overland hex generation systems. And so we were like, okay, what are we going to do for Dungeon 25? What's it going to be? Is it going to be another overland? You and I were batting back and forth ideas. One of them was cities
A
and
city
towns.
crawl, I think, right?
Yeah, city crawl. I don't know if that would have had any more legs than the other ones, at least for my motivation levels and stuff. But I feel like it is an underrepresented generation idea.
Yeah.
So that's
And
where it
not as many
started.
people do as much stuff with cities, you know?
Yeah, and then, but then I feel like that morphed, and like there were four of us at least, if not more. Oh, I want to say there's another guy, British dude, run a bunch of the.
Shire propagandist, maybe.
Nope.
Ooh.
Captain Janeway. So there was a few of us that were thinking about this book right here, Deities and Demigods. Encyclopedia of Gods and Heroes from Myth and Legend. You see, I have the original hardback. I do not have the ultra rare first edition. So my hard copy does not have Elric of Melniboné and the Great Cthulhu and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if I'm saying that right. The Great Cthulhu, however you pronounce it. I'm sure I'd get
Everybody
kicked
says
out.
Cthulhu. Anybody who has a different pronunciation is not in America.
Or
Not
they're
in
actually
America.
in
Not
the
in
cult
America.
of the Starborn, right? Like,
Either way, they're going back.
yeah. So yeah, written James Ward and Robert J. Kuntz, who has all. I haven't had James Ward on, but I have had Robert Kuntz on this channel.
Isn't
And
James Ward
so
dead?
I I don't know. Mayhap. I
We
probably
still got
will
him
never
on.
have him on my channel then, if that's the case. Man, that took a turn.
You can still get him on. You could go to the graveside.
We're gonna need something from out of here to do that. Anywho,
Yeah.
so this book is often referred to as the fourth core book of AD&D First Edition. That like it is that necessary. It definitely is. If you've got cleric players and you're not using this stuff, what are you doing? But the idea was, okay, what if what? Here's the other thing. In the BroSR, some of the things that have been done that are like the most legendary ever are the multi-campaign overarching crossover events, right? I'm thinking Stormbringer, the sword passing from Trollopolis into Dubzaron. I'm thinking of the fate of Stormbringer and all of the campaigns that got wrapped up in John Mollison, Mr. Wargaming himself, was playing out. You got each night, you got a different part of the battle to see what was going to happen with this sword. And like, I missed those days. I was a little late to the party, Rube. I was fascinated and I was getting into it and I was reading about it. And I also was not part of Brovenloft, which was the craziest thing I've ever heard of in gaming. And so, from my perspective, I was like, is there something we can do to get back to this multiverse concept where the different one-to-one time campaigns can impact each other? So that's what I was excited about. What was it about the deities and demigods that got your juices flowing as we transitioned away from cities?
Yeah, and that got a lot more interest because people were looking for like this. You mentioned it earlier. This other half of the cleric game, this
Yeah.
other half of connecting campaigns together, and we started getting an idea of like, okay, there's a lot of. We had all of our infighting, we had all of our nonsense this past year.
Yeah.
Part of why Hexplorer 24 didn't really take off.
2024 was an insane year in the bros.
It was rough. It was rough, but we figured that we could get back to it, not just like, it's not like a reunification campaign for the BroSR so much as, hey, just let's reintroduce this one element and get people who are not affiliated with us we're going to give them a little introduction to these ideas. Like,
Yeah.
yes, just on the face of things, we no longer have to explain things to stupid people. We're just finding people we like, right? There's going to be people we like out there, and they want to include gods in their game, and they love having free quests delivered to them. Hey, take this or use it if you want to, or don't, and we'll see what happens.
Right. So the title, Deities and Decrees, the idea that we are going to mine this resource for any and maybe even all of the deities that are in there, and that they are going to take an interest in your campaign, in your world. And you don't even have to be running a BroSR campaign to get in on this if you want to. We decided it was going to take. Well, explain the format, James, for the for what we were doing for the weekly. The ideas we have for the weekly thing.
Yeah, it's really simple. We pick 4 pantheons and we pick one god from each pantheon for people on Twitter and possibly other places to vote on to decide who is going to get like an expose. The
Yeah.
winner is going to get an expose on what their shrine looks like, what their, give them a little bit of information from deities and demigods, maybe some context around how the god might have changed in past editions or how it's represented today or was, whatever have you. But the meat, the big draw is that the selected god is going to have a quest for your players to interact with. There will be a trigger, which you as the referee can place anywhere. It's usually going to be attached to a shrine because we're working off something that's in the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide under the trick section. Shrines are in there. And they're a prompt for getting wishes, which I found out a couple years ago. And then finally, you get to report back on whether or not your players actually, you get to just drop this in your game. It's a
Yeah.
free-floating, almost procedural kind of quest.
Yeah, it is. It is free gameable content from your bros at Deities and Decrees. So I started it off on January 14th just to test the waters on the polling. I said, how should the Pantheon reward obedience in each connected one-to-one time campaign? And you guys got to choose from a stat bonus by alignment, a magic item introduced, plague enemies, like they could make it rougher for the people that you're against, or they could create a demigod or monster for your people to have to deal with. And magic item introduced was the top winner. So we'll have to file that away for later. This is just the board game from Blood Rage. I don't know if you even knew what I was doing when I posted this one, Rube. I don't know if you guys have played the board game. It's awesome. It's
I did miss that.
Oh, so I went to our friendly local gaming store. I had some bros. I had some my brother-in-law and some guys from church, and I had just played a lot of these Euro games. I had played a lot of strategy games that women will play, and by that I mean games like Catan or Puerto Rico or stuff. And I was like, what's the bird game? Wingspan. And I was like, women will play a strategy game with you as long as there's no bloodshed involved. And so I was with the bros, and we walked in, and the proprietor of the store came up and said, hey, what can I help you with? And I said, I want a game that no woman would sit down and play with me. And got some looks and smirks from around the store. And I was like, I don't want to settle. My wife had to settle. We're not settling. I want something raw and masculine. And he's like, I have just the thing for you. And he brings up this box, and it has a stinking Viking charging you on the cover while a volcano erupts behind him, and it's called Blood Rage. And I was like, heck yeah, that's what I want.
That slaps.
So it's like Risk, except that it's like the end of time. It's Ragnarok, and so you want to capture territory, but you do not have to worry about troop welfare because they're all going to get nuked anyway. It's about gathering how much glory you can when you go out. But the thing that stood out to me about the board game is, if you see here in the center, I've got Yggdrasil. This is the center, and this is the world tree. And I was like, druids. Druids are true neutral. So if we have neutral gods, this is where they're going to likely go. And then there's 3 regions. There's Mannheim, Alfheim, and Jotunheim. I was like, okay, people, elves, and got giants and goblins and stuff, right? Trolls. So I'm like, okay, all right. So we've got, law, neutrality, and chaos, and then inside each of those, you've got 3 other provinces, if you will. So in each of those, you could have good, neutral, and evil, right? And the one that's neutral, the elves, only has 2. Because Yggdrasil would be the neutral. So I was like, hey, this is cool. It doesn't need to be this map. We don't need to use these names. But the idea is, as these deities pop into this nexus, they're going to start staking their claim and setting out where their kingdom is according to their alignment. And this could lead to something that we have planned for down the road, where we might have an overarching DDG Stein, a Deities and Demigods Stein, a Braunstein-like event that is over all of the campaigns that are willingly entwined with this. And what happens in the Nexus can have far-reaching effects in all of them if everybody agrees to it. So that's some of the ideas I had with that. So that's kind of like my background headcanon. You feel free to use this or reject it however you want. You do not need to, absorb all of the stuff that we're throwing out here to include deities and decrees in your game.
I think that's really in keeping with the spirit of what we were trying to do with Dungeon 23 and Hexplore 24.
Yeah.
And what we were planning to do with the city crawl, but just like in a more obvious. I completely agree with B-Dubs in a way more interesting way. I like what we've
Yeah.
done with this instead.
And it
Right?
kind
Hey,
of,
you're prompted to include this in your game. You will probably, if I mention that Coyote is doing XYZ, you will probably think of a place to put that in your game.
that's right.
If you are referee material. If you can't
And if
think of a
you,
way to do that, you have a problem.
and if we've put that seed in your idea, that idea in your head as a DM, that there is a nexus, not only whereby you can access like the alignment plane of your deity that has like found their way in here, but from the nexus, if you make it into Yggdrasil, you can follow the roots or the branches and get into any other campaign as well. So
Yes.
your players, if they figure that out, might want to use that down the road. But enough about that. We've got OP at War. So this is another account you're going to want to follow at Outer Planes War. I think this is going to be the one where the Braunstein-like activity starts to happen. And then we come to the first poll. And so, Rube, tell me about how we came up with which gods to throw in this. Because you got the whole book to choose from. How do you pick just four, right?
There's something like over a dozen pantheons, and even that is a little bit misleading because on top of those, dozen or so pantheons, you have a section for non-human gods, and non-human deities have a bunch of subdivisions of their own. It's just a ton of non-humans.
Yeah.
So we figured, all right, let's choose some things let's have at least two results that are recognizable. So Greek, Norse, obviously easily recognizable. And then second, we didn't want everything to be obvious. And on top of that, you came up with the idea of kind of collating these, making sure that all of our bases were covered.
Yeah.
As far as classes go.
Yes.
So Coyote covers the thief. We have Odin covering the cleric, Odin covering the cleric. Hecate or Hecate.
I say Hecate. I don't know if that's how other people pronounce it.
Or Hecate, whatever her name is, covers magic users. And then, of course, we have Morrigan, the Irish god of war, covering fighters. And once you figured that pattern out, it was pretty clear that we would probably be able to repeat that process across pretty much the entire Deities and Demigods thing.
Yeah.
It wouldn't only be like the 4 OD&D classes, but that's like a really good start. Since everything else is like in a similar vein, it's a really good starting point.
Yeah. I was thinking from the player's point of view, which would they be most interested in? The kind of boons that the god can offer. I thought, well, if I'm a thief or an assassin, I definitely would be interested in the Coyote, in the trickery god. If I'm a straight up fighter, I want a war god. Exactly. So that kind of, in the parentheses, I didn't put their alignments. I didn't put what pantheon they were from. I just put, this is the kind of thing. And it was close between war and trickery, but Coyote edged it out with a 2% lead.
Neither of the obvious options we're going for, which is excellent. That's exactly what you want. You want people really hyped about doing the really exciting stuff.
Right on. So if you do not have a copy, I'm just going to quickly read a little bit about Coyote. Coyote is found on page 12 of Deities and Demigods. I will spare you going through his stat block. I'm just going to read the little flavor text on it. It says, although Coyote is responsible for teaching arts, crafts, and the use of light and fire, he is primarily a bullying, greedy trickster. This chaotic personality makes him difficult to understand. As a trickster, he will usually be accompanied by a giant wolf or sometimes by a giant fox, a wildcat, badger, or porcupine. Often his tricks will backfire on him. His role is primarily that of a cowardly thief. His followers will most often appeal to him to improve their thieving abilities or to be granted tricks involving illusionist spells of fire, light, or darkness. Coyote can polymorph himself once per day, but is limited to the animal kingdom. Coyote will flee combat whenever possible, but when cornered, he will fight. He bites for 3 to 30 points of damage. Whenever Coyote is involved in trickery, his two favorite spells are Invisibility and Animate Object. With these two abilities, he's able to make objects, including himself, disappear and move about. There's more in here about the American Indian mythos as it was understood in 1980 or whenever this thing came out. And there's awesome essays at the beginning of the book and at the end and in the DMG about how this kind of stuff works. So once we knew you guys had chosen Coyote, I knew that Coyote had found his way into the Nexus whereby he could access all of your campaigns. And then Rube and I had to decide, okay, what does that mean for the quest? And what does that mean for the shrine and all of that kind of stuff? So,
Right. How are we going to incorporate this into your games?
and you came up with the quest.
You're right. You're right. When we were doing that, I believe that you came up with the shrine as well, which was
Yeah.
nice because we were chatting. How are we going to do this? And I just went back to my personal well of stuff that I've done videos on. I said, hey, let's give him a magic item. And if we're going to give him a magic item, let's make it about recovery. Like, Coyote's a trickster.
Did
What
you
is
see
he
this
going
one,
to
this
do?
post from Wargaming?
Uh-oh. Yes, I did see that.
Coyote, you
I did
rascal.
see-
Happy hunting ground.
Right at the end. It was
Yeah.
magnificent. So we asked about that, and I think what we decided on was like, okay, shrines in AD&D, they let you touch the shrine, say the deity's name, and if you do so, one, you are not zapped for however much damage. Two, the deity will provide you with some quest, usually to slay a creature, and upon completion of the quest, you will be granted a wish.
Yes.
Perfect. Very fun, very easy. Tells you a lot about how AD&D understands wishes and how tabletop games are supposed to accommodate them. And a
Well,
little bit more common.
let's camp on that for just a second, because although if you read the rules, it sounds like wishes are going to be, I mean, they're not going to be lying around, but that you will get to use them. And like, there's
You're
something,
expected to encounter them
yeah,
in a
and they're not
campaign.
like all powerful. Like some things that you want to do are going to require multiple wishes to do it, right? Like if you wanted to
Right.
raise your strength or something like that, right? So there is kind of this in the rules an expectation that wishes are going to be there, which, to be quite frank, scares the crap out of a lot of DMs.
Oh,
You
yeah.
want to give the players that much autonomy.
The first time they come across a shrine in Appendix A or a magic pool that gives people that gives people wishes of a certain alignment, it's like, all right, well, how do we do this? And it scares the players as well because they're
Yeah.
used to the DMs being scared of it. And they're like, they write out this big long contract. I had to chastise my players in the Chilmus Valley campaign about this. I was like, no. One or two sentences. There is always a possibility of a monkey's paw. That possibility increases the longer your wish goes.
Yes.
And depending on the person giving it to you, which is the other key part here. Coyote is giving you a wish. He's got a trickery. It's kind of expected that there's going to be a monkey's, even if it's maximally convenient for you, even if this is as good for you as it could possibly be,
Yeah.
there should be some kind of monkey's paw. Right?
Yeah. Especially because of who's giving the wish. Coyote is a trickster god. He is not going to play it straight. So as a DM, that gives you all kinds of leeway to I mean, not to wreck their wish, but to interpret it in a way that may increase additional complications for the players, which is they're going to eat it right up. It's going to be gameable. It's going to be interesting. Now,
That's an important thing. We should linger on that for just a second
Okay.
for
Yeah.
future reference, because wishes are going to come up a lot when we do stuff like this, and a lot of them will not appear to have the value of a wish. A lot of the quests that we give out won't seem to be like, all right, well, you get I don't think that completing a quest like this, a simple fetch quest or a simple monster slaying quest, deserves a scroll of wish, and that's not quite what we're going for
Yeah.
here. And that's really important for consideration when it comes to how do you interpret these? How do you interpret the player's wishes? First, yes, it's going to come into conflict with the person who's giving it to you. Coyote is looking for an excuse to trick you. for
Mm-hmm.
this. Perhaps the whole point of giving you an easier, quote, easy quest is either that you're more likely to engage in some kind of mishap or whatever. Something is more likely, some tragedy is more likely to befall you because of things that you didn't expect. It seemed too easy at first, and now you're going to face tragedy. Or as a result of the wish, the whole point was giving you an easy quest so that you could come back to him, get a wish, and he could trick you with it in some
Yeah.
way, or the monkey's paw could curl. However, you have to, when you're doing like the monkey's paw thing, I think it's incumbent on the DM to either come up with, if you want to do the monkey's paw, or if you want to introduce any inconvenience on it, through the casting of the wish, it has to be on the wording of the players,
Yes.
and that's really important. And if you can't figure out that wording, you need to draw from a different well when it comes to screwing with the players. If you want to do the monkey's paw thing, right? I remember an example from a few years ago. Somebody was like, I wished for an airship. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah, it's a simple wish. I wish to have an airship.
Mm-hmm.
And the airship appears, and there were 25 iron golems on it, and all of whom started attacking the players, and the players had been placed by the wish in the middle of them and started getting pounded. And I think they were surprised or whatever have you. And I'm like, well, there's nothing in the wish about the iron golems. There's
Yeah.
nothing like that's just kind of a
It feels like a cheat.
yeah. It's artless is
Yeah.
the problem.
Yes.
I want to have an airship. If you receive a deed that says that your airship is on the other side of the world, that's clever.
There you go.
Right? That's something Coyote might go with. Also, there's a blue whale on top of this airship, and the wish has also placed you between the airship and the blue whale. That's not clever trickery or whatever have you.
Yeah. Now, but the thing I'm getting at too is you need to give them some good of it. It can't just be that you interpret it such a way that they just get whooped, so.
By and large, yeah.
So
I think the exceptions are so few and far between that they're almost not worth engaging with.
Yeah, because you could say, well, you get a ship that's made of air, and so then you got like just a regular boat, but it's like Wonder Woman's plane, right? Like you just see like a hole in the water.
Yeah. If engaging with the wish makes your players never want to try again, and you cut out this entire range of
Yeah.
gameplay options from the game, you can say for sure that you did it wrong, and you probably shouldn't.
It needs to tantalize them. It needs them to make. It needs to make them a little bit scared, but want another one.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Good stuff. So for the shrine, I mean, I took this serious. I am not Native American, except in the way that a lot of white people are when we say, yeah, I've got like a small percentage. I was not raised in the culture. My grandmother could trace her lineage straight back to Tecumseh, but I do not claim this. So I wanted to get it right when I was doing the shrine. It would not be underground or in a building. It would be in the open air. The one that I was most nervous
As a
about.
person who lists 2 or more races on all of my job applications, I very much appreciate that.
Right on, man. I wanted to be respectful about totem poles as well, because those tell the story of the family that carved them and stuff. But by the same token, the Coyote was a trickster god, and so it would be in his realm to take something that was important and for one of the totem poles, he has changed all the carvings to just be his own likeness. So he's like the center of attention for the entire story. And for the other one, he bent it over so that it's not standing up straight. So I hope that that's not taken as me disrespecting what a totem pole is, but in my mind, it would be part of the shrine of a trickster god who's known for messing with things that others hold sacred. So I don't know. Right. I was worried about that. Let me know if you are of native blood and you're like, man, that's not kosher Dunder Moose, and I'll try to do better because I'm not. We are dealing with some old handling of some sensitive topics, and I don't want to I don't want to turn off anybody that could have a lot of fun with this stuff. But by the same token, I feel like our culture has been so afraid of offense that they would just rather not pick up these awesome mythological elements, and I think there's a lot of fun here that you could miss out on. So if I haven't just canceled both of us, let's keep going. So that's where the shrine came from. When we were cracking up as we were coming up with this stuff. One of the ideas we had was like, okay, and I mean, this might be something earmuffs if you're a player, but the DMs listen. We thought if you touch the skull and say Coyote, if you are of the same alignment as he, which what is Coyote's alignment anyway?
Chaotic neutral, I believe. I have it on
Yep, you are exactly right.
alignment.
Chaotic neutral. If you touch it and say his name and you are not chaotic neutral, well, if you are chaotic neutral, it's just a quest. He's like, hey, here's what I want, and if you bring it to me, I will give you a wish. Now, I had to make sure to reword that. He's not giving you a wish scroll, because I know if he gives that out, all of the wizard players will grab it and then write wish in their spell book, and then that's, I wish for 1,000 wishes is basically what that is, right? Now, there are limits on wish. Like you need to pulverize a bunch of diamonds, and like it's not an easy spell to cast. But our idea was, nope, Coyote's going to just grant you a wish in the moment. He's not going to give you a portable thing you can carry away with you. You're going to have to do it.
Yeah, it's not something you can bank, and that's pretty standard for wishes that you find in the dungeon. Most of them have a stipulation that, hey, you need to do this within you have a day, or else the magic fades. You lose it, which is especially useful and important in a 1-to-1 time campaign.
But if you are not of the same, then what happens is that it's not a voluntary quest that you are offered, but Coyote places a geas upon you. And I don't know if I'm saying that word right.
It's Old Irish. It's fine.
Okay. It's not geas.
Gish, which actually doesn't matter because there's multiple different Gaelic dialects. There's
you are under compulsion.
Yeah.
He's going to send your gay ass on a quest. No, that's not how you say it.
Yeah, there you go.
Forgive me. That was close to a swear. Okay.
You got this quiet part in my out loud.
Yeah.
I can do that.
So, in other words, if you aren't of the right alignment and you dare invoke his name, now it becomes mandatory, which I think is for both players and DMs way more fun. It's like, oh shoot, there's going to be penalties if I don't follow along or if I don't try it. So, but you were the one that came up with the idea of what was the quest? What is a trickster god? What kind of a quest is he going to send his tricksters on?
Because we wanted him to steal from somebody, but also had the prompt of slaying a monster in the original text of the altars, which is described as a trick, and it's one of the few example-only portions of the game. There's a lot of different qualities of these these tricks that we'll be drawing from as we go forward. Mm-hmm. But I wanted a monster. I wanted it to be a shapeshifter. Yeah. And I wanted the focus of the quest to be thievery. I wanted him to steal. It says the worshipper's alignment. Yeah, we're going to steal an item from the shapeshifter. The worshipper's alignments are chaotic neutral or thieves, right? Mm-hmm. If you're a thief, it doesn't really matter what alignment you are. You can offer, you can get some patronage from Coyote, it seems.
Yeah.
So we decided on, I just kept racking my brain. I'm like, let me find a shapeshifter, good one. I didn't think that hags were in first edition, so that didn't really work, which is a shame because I love hags. I really wanted to use them.
And I stumbled across steal from a hag.
Oh yeah, that would have been perfect. Like talk about engendering tragedy. I found a really weird one called an imorph from the Fiend Folio.
All right, Fiend Folio. The imorph. There's the I section is very small. Imorph is the second in the section. It's on page 52 for those playing the home game. And we don't even get a picture of the imorph.
The imorph is a very special creature.
You want me to read about it? Shall we?
Yes, please.
Okay. The natural form of this beast is a gray-green lumpy cylinder about 4 feet high and 2 feet average diameter. A short single leg trails behind the main body and has a suction cup like that of a snail. Other similar suction cups under the main body itself permit the beast a jerky mode of locomotion. So pay attention. When the thing moves, it's not smooth, it's not graceful. It is like bumping and thumping in suction company. It's probably making armpit fart, sorry, no noises. Anyway,
Works.
or like darts getting pulled off of glass. Anyway, 2 5-foot-long tentacles emerge from the top of the body, but there are no apparent eyes, ears, or other features. Indeed, the whole creature is a constantly changing mass of a rubbery, dough-like substance, the same color as bilious human flesh. The creature,
You're back to the flesh pit until its special effects start kicking in.
yeah. Here's where it gets special. The creature will not normally attack unless threatened, but when it does so, it strikes with its tentacles for 1 to 4 hit points of damage each. When engaged in melee, the creature exhibits a startling power of imorphism. At the beginning of each melee round, except the first, it changes its hit dice and armor class by 1 point each toward the values of its opponent, at the same time gradually changing its shape to resemble its opponent's shape. When hit dice and armor class and hence appearance are the same as those of its opponent, the creature instantly alters its attack and movement to fit the subject. Note that the imorph assumes only the physical appearance of its opponent, though it will grow various appendages to copy its opponent's weapons and limbs. It will still strike with the equivalent of 2 tentacles each round for 1 to 4 hit points. So it doesn't get, like, its attack doesn't grow, but its armor class does, and its hit dice do.
Right. So, and that's basically the gist of the imorph. There's a couple other interesting details to it, but like the overview is it's a shapeshifter. It doesn't look like a shapeshifter at first. When you start fighting it, it starts shapeshifting into you. And this is where you had the idea, or no, it wasn't at this point. You were thinking of having the players recover an item before we were considering monsters, or orthogonal to considering monsters, and you had brought up the Hat of Disguise.
Which is a great thing to steal from a thief. Oh man, will they hate you if you take their Hat of Disguise.
It's going to be very upsetting to them. And the fact that the thief has to, but the thief gets to presumably use it on the way back if they're recovering this item and bring it back to the thing.
Yeah.
Bring it back to the shrine. So, you know, you get a little bit of use. I do that all the time. Temporary use magic items based on, you know, something I have to recover. It's a lot of fun. Fun way to, like, go outside the bounds of normal play in, like, a small way, but, like, also one that exposes them to a ton more danger in a lot of different ways. If you don't get this thing back on time, then what, ...
Yeah. And not to say that you have to use the imorph. We wanted to provide something, but like if in your campaign you have another shapeshifter, that would be, I mean, the quest is steal something from a shapeshifter and bring it back to me, right? But we wanted to, in the case that you don't know what to do or you don't have one to hand, we say, all right, here's an interesting one. The thing is not intelligent. It acts like a beast, right? Except insofar as when it imorphs into its prey. And so between us bouncing that idea back and forth, you were like, well, what if it just could wear the Hat of Disguise and look totally human? Right.
What if somebody put the Hat of Disguise on them, or it had accidentally equipped it in some way?
Yeah.
And now it had semi-human intelligence at this point, or was able to pass the Turing test, I suppose.
Right. Well, and so we kind of just abductively reasoning our way back from this ridiculous. We've got this imorph monster that can look like its prey and has a hat on. How did it get that way? One of the things, and again, you don't have to use it, but you totally can. One of the ideas that cracked us up is, what if it came across an adventuring party, it started attacking one of the members, and for whatever reason, as players are wont to do, they decided not to kill and destroy it. And so once it had locked in the form of its assailant and they had made peace, it was kind of stuck there and just followed them back into town. And so like we were like cracking up over the idea that it's going to be hard to spot a shape changer. But if you go into a town and there's 2 dudes that look exactly the same and one of them's normal and the other's oddly nonverbal, maybe that's a clue. And then we thought, well, how embarrassing would that be to be walking around town with this kind of like dumb version of yourself? So maybe the player is the one who put the hat of disguise on it because he just was embarrassed.
Yeah,
We were cracking up having these talks, having these ideas. You
it
can
was a lot of
totally,
fun.
you can use that if you want. You don't have to. But so yeah,
We
so the
had a couple alternatives, like it's in a dungeon, and they put it on as a means of like pacifying it because it's a relatively tough creature insofar as its total
yeah,
hit points are concerned.
yeah, and
Doesn't do a ton of
it grows
damage.
in hit dice as it comes at you, right?
If you are higher in hit dice, then it will grow to match you,
Yeah,
which will, but like, what if putting the hat of disguise on actually stopped it? The whole idea here was, okay, and I had a video about this, or I had a video which mentioned this in your first adventure. The magic item descriptions in the game are how they interact with player characters. It's reasonable, given that there are weird rituals and monsters for whom we have no spells or listed methods of creation, that those might or maybe even must include existing magic items, but they interact with other creatures in ways that they don't interact with the players. So what happens when you put a hat of disguise on a shapeshifter? Maybe it stops them from transforming anymore.
yeah, yeah. The last paragraph is interesting too. It's gameable. You can use it or not. It says within the creature's body there is a small organ corresponding to the human liver made of a rubbery green substance. Within the organ is a liquid of similar color which, when mixed with water in equal quantity, serves as a potion of polymorph self. There will be sufficient liquid in a single imorph to make 1 to 3 drafts of such a potion, and it is for this reason that the imorph is attacked by adventurers. So, if you do wind up fighting it and killing it, there's another little goodie you can have. Otherwise, maybe you just steal the hat and I don't know if at that point it changes back into looking like the other guy or.
It might. If this has already been like really messed up by putting the hat on it, what happens when you take it off?
I think what happens is it starts to imorph into you, like it attacks. So as soon as it's free of that, it could attack you. But again,
Yeah.
that's just us talking about this. You are the DM. You got to decide. We're giving you the toys. You play with them how you want,
Yeah,
right?
you could make it like, all right, we're now the imorph has turned cancerous, right? Now it's like compounding error on error because it's been locked into two different forms. So
Yeah,
you get a little bit of like a chimerism if you have another monster in the area or whatever have you.
yeah,
We played around with the idea of like making use of its general intelligence or like its
yeah,
newfound intelligence. What were the points for style we
yeah.
had?
So, yeah, let me just read the post real quick. It's just going to cover what we've already said. The quest gas will be to steal from a shape changer and leave the offering back on the table. The shape changer will be an imorph, page 52 of the Fiend Folio. The item will be stolen from the imorph. The item to be stolen is a hat of disguise. The reward is a wish spell. So we said style points are rewarded for placing the imorph in the ruins of a modern day casino. I think that was yours.
That was mine, absolutely.
Portray the
And as
imorph as
somebody
a.
who lists 2 races on all of my job applications, I do have
You've got the cachet to
I
make
got the
that.
card. Yeah.
Right on. Portray the imorph as a
Do
bartender
actually
from The
sue.
Shining or Appendix N novel, and place the imorph in a human town. I don't think you said human. I might have misinterpreted what you were saying with
I think
what
I
kind
meant
of town.
like mortal or like people town. Like it would be funny to have an imorph in a town full of gnomes. I think it's going to be a lot more effective at
Oh,
killing them afterwards once you take the hat off, if that's how that
gotcha,
goes.
gotcha. Okay, so I guess those who watch this, you can do demi-human or human, just as long as
Yeah.
it's not a god
Placing
town.
it in like a human town is probably like the easiest, probably yeah, I think that's like the most standard one to go with. You don't
Yeah.
also have to worry about like, all right, how do I make up a gnome town and then also put the shapeshifter in it?
And remember the walk. Remember, even if he looks good, he's going to have suction cup feet, and one of them will probably be more ponderous than the other. I just love the idea of seeing a human do that weird stumpy walk, and it'll be a little clue for people who are
Yeah.
searching for shapeshifters.
I
Anything
think their
you,
movement speed does change to match, but I
yeah,
don't think that that undoes the whole suction cup thing.
yeah. I mean, well, maybe if if it's truly iamorphing, they would probably get the smoother gait. But if you're looking for clues to give players who are trying to find one of these things, especially if they're under a Gaius and they have to, That might either he walks kind of stumpy like a hunchback, or he makes those suction cup noises when he's
Yeah, each time he like steps up, he's got like this little bit of like a janky.
yeah. Get in the do your inner Matt Mercer and do all the the sound effects. And Okay, so I think that catches us up, right? It's a wish. We talked about how it's going to be good to monkey's paw the heck out of the wish because it's a trickster god in the first place, and just you should be doing that with wishes anyway.
Yeah.
So what have we not mentioned?
What we haven't mentioned is to go down the list. I think the biggest one is the follow up.
Yes.
So we have a week on, kind of week off structure here because there's a lot more than just like the basic day. Well, there's greater gods and there's lesser gods in DDG. There's also a bunch of heroes in there. There's new magic items. There's a few unique creatures or new creatures, especially in that beautiful first edition printing. And we want to use as many as we can. So we said, all right, so this isn't like completely off. So this isn't like completely disjointed that we're not just putting things randomly. We're building a means of like,
Yeah.
we're building the threads that we're going to weave into a web and give you guys an example that you can weave into your own campaigns. We're going to do that by whenever we feature a god, right? Choose somebody through the polls and whatever have you. The next week is going to be a hero or deity dedicated to opposing them, also
Yeah.
chosen from DDG.
So the idea is this god has like broken through into this new nexus that's opened up, and they're not just going to get free reign to take over your campaign. That with them will come the nemesis, the one who's hot on their trail, trying to prevent them from having their way. So the next week, starting Monday, we'll have another poll with people to choose from. People, beings, gods, deities, demigods, heroes.
I think it'll be tomorrow, I think.
Yes, tomorrow. Oh wait, yeah, today's Monday.
Because today's Monday.
Sorry, guys. It's been a long week these last couple days. We had one for sure. Should we just no? Let's make it a poll.
Yep, we are going to make it a poll, but we'll definitely give you folks a few examples here. So we have Ishtar, who's going to be the goddess of love and war. This will be one of the few greater gods that we've included so far. We're going to have a hero, which is, do you want to go over that one?
Yeah, page 21 of the Deities and Demigods. King Pelennor, there's a picture of him. And what's that creature following along behind him? King Pelennor is from the Arthurian mythos, and he is the knight of the questing beast. This knight fought with King Arthur and almost defeated him. He later joined the Round Table and became one of the Queen's guards. Pelennor hunts a strange, unique creature, the questing beast, which his family is fated to pursue, though neither they nor anybody else will ever catch it. At the time of Arthur's court, Pelennor is just past middle age, though still a stout fighter. So he's going after this kind of wily, tricky beast. So we were like, oh man.
That's
That could
perfect for Coyote. And there's no reason for Coyote to be the questing beast. But of course, Coyote, being a shapeshifter, could also transform into King Pelennor, the object of King Pellennor's desire.
Coyote would think that's funny. Because he would also know that while Pelennor is chasing him, the real questing beast is running free, right?
Yeah, he's going further and further away, and thus the curse or prophecy continues.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are some of the ideas. We're gonna have four for you.
I've got two more for you because I did set those together.
Oh, you did? Okay, go ahead. Well, do we want to?
The way we do this is by like swapping the alignments and swapping the pantheon. So whenever we're choosing opposition, we're usually not going back to the same pantheon, and we're usually usually swapping the alignments and stuff like that. So he's more of a trickster god, so naturally we're looking more towards more lawful deities in general. But we do still want to get that other coverage. So number 3 is actually going to be Fafhrd from the Nawan Pantheon, also known as the folks from Lankmar. And I did want to get, because especially for this one, I wanted to get one more heroes and two fewer like IRL deities, right? There's a bunch of
Hmm.
non-human deities in there. There's a bunch of Appendix N deities and heroes in there. So I said, hey, we got to get those in. And the last one was, looking at my list here, there we go. Was it that one? Oh, there we are. That's my bad. The last one was from the Cthulhu mythos, which is going to be Shub-Niggurath.
Wow.
I think I pronounced that correctly.
I'm not going to try.
This, yeah, there we go. The fountain of uncleanliness is a huge pool of gray matter, 100 feet across in the caverns beneath Mount Vorp. Nope, not going to try. It's constantly bubbling and pulling. It's basically a giant gibbering mouther,
That's
which
awesome.
seems like it would have some kind of, or could have some kind of relationship to an imorph, and might rather, in the way that greater deities and Cthulhu-style deities often do, outer gods might not be aware of Coyote's plan, might not be have any intentions towards Coyote, might just want to. They're just on a collision course with whatever Coyote's
Yeah.
trying to do. They're on a collision course with it.
Or maybe
So
they had plans for the imorph, and Coyote's little joke did not best please them.
exactly. Coyote's looking for the. Ideally, you could play this out in game though, because usually this is going to be you want to play the collision out in game if possible. So if you're going to the imorph and the poll winner turns out to be Shub, we're gonna abbreviate that. If it turns out to be Shub, then hey, whatever dungeon or town you populate this, if you're doing the
Little
American
Shubby.
casino, yeah, Shub is going to have a bunch of gibbering mouthers spill out of the broken slot machines that your players are surrounded by, trying to absorb the imorph. And if they absorb the imorph, then no more. That's a shame. You're going to lose that hat of disguise. It's going to be really inconvenient for whoever has a place to
Yeah.
bomb them.
Yeah. Well, and not to mention, maybe if you're a thief and you get a hat of disguise, you might not want to give up that sucker. You might not want to be like, I'm going to leave this on the shrine, right?
You might
So
want
you're
to
gonna,
sell it. You might
yeah,
not want to chance the wish.
yeah. You might want to just get, but then you're going to have to deal with failing to accomplish what Coyote demanded of you. So
He's not
interesting
going to be
things
happy
can
with you.
happen. Crafty Matt says awesome things are happening in Brotech 2. Yeah, I do this thing, man. I always do it. I get the FOMO and I sign up for a bunch of stuff. And this was awful because, well, my granddad died and we had to go to the funeral, and then our rat died after we got back, and then yeah, a bunch of. So I got excuses for days. I'm like behind. I backed out of some stuff that I wanted to be a part of. I think I'm still in that one, but I am way behind on my on my submissions. But I have not forgotten Brotech 2 Crafty, and I am looking forward to having the Brotech guys on to talk about that after it goes down. The Brotech one was crazy, just nuts, bananas, bonkers. But back to deities and decrees, we are interested. What do you guys think of this little idea? Is this? I'm glad we got Dornal in the chat. He's running Trilopulus right now. I don't know if Macho was able to jump in. He's the other Trilopulus guy. I know Scuddifer Mike has in-person campaigns and stuff. And I think Mr. Wargaming definitely wanted in the way he's been well, he said Coyote isn't just going to be a shrine, that they're going to run into him, right?
Yeah, they're going to run into Coyote physically, which you can do. And that's the other thing that we're doing with these polls is once we start choosing people or choosing from a mythos, we start giving you a little bit more information of like, hey, what's the valuable crap that you might be using here? When it comes to Native Americans and the Native American deities as presented in DDG, it's mentioned in the book. Hey, they're really close to nature. These are gods that you can meet out in the borderlands. If you're running, keep on the
Yeah.
borderlands. Imagine if your patron deities are sitting just outside the fort. and simultaneously are probably the biggest possible danger to you. They're not the most immediate threat.
Yeah. And they'll never look like people. Well, I can't say never, but oftentimes you will run into Raven as a Raven. You will run into Coyote in his Coyote form. So,
Any animal result could be a deity in disguise.
oh yeah, any wildlife, herd animal or whatever. So, if you guys have questions, hit us up in the chat. We'll try to answer them. We'll take a few more minutes here. I didn't want this to be the full 2 hour standard Dunder Moose experience. I just wanted to kind of, for those that were following along and maybe a little mystified, I wanted to like pull the curtain back and say, here's what's up. This is awesome. We want this to be fun for you, and we want to know if you're going to be using this stuff. Drop a comment on one of the threads on X or here on YouTube. I guess I'm on X and YouTube at the same time right now. We'll be watching all the things. Let us know, and we also are going to be curious to see how this may show up in your session reports. So don't be shy about listing the link to your blogs and stuff. Jacob,
Or
Letourneau-
tweeting if you don't have time for the blog, which shame on you. But if you don't have time, at the very least, tweet out what happens, right? So I have we're going back to Chilmus Valley. We're restarting it in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and that officially begins this Friday. We actually already had one session, but that was a different DM running it, which was also really cool. But the Office of Immigration and Cryptid Enforcement had a very good haul on our first session. But there was a chupacabra there. It was eating, these wonderful llamas, and that DM who ran it placed it in the CMV world, or on the CMV map. But we're going to do some dungeon crawling. There's going to be a shrine to Coyote there. I don't know why there's a shrine to Coyote in a fortress that's half flooded. It's filled. It has dwarves, it has mermaids and nixies in it. But I already made a relatively coherent dungeon out of that to begin with when I used the random results that came up with, dungeons, dwarves, nixies, and mermaids in them. So we went with it. So I'm going to put that in there. Pathfinder 2nd Edition has a system of obediences and anathemas. It doesn't do alignment. Okay. It does obediences and anathemas. Sort of in a roundabout way, boomeranging back to the original purpose of alignment in AD&D, which is to say, who can you ally with, right? Here are some things that are going to earn you the favor of your deity, and here's some things that are going to cast you out of your faith, probably permanently, if you do them. So, and that really does get back to the original purpose. So I'm just using Coyote as one of those. There might be a deity that I can sub in for Coyote, or more appropriately, just call Coyote. It exists in Galarian or whatever have you, but the shrine's going to be there. There's going to be a shapeshifter there. I'm going to try to find something as close as I can to the imorph. I'm going to find a magic item effect that gets close as possible to what we were discussing with the Hat of Disguise. But I don't have to worry about it all that much because it's a shrine. It's the quest. It's like this goes into the PC's logbook when they touch the shrine and if they accept or if they get Jace to do it. So that can just kind of stay in the back. It's opt-in. But once and if that comes up, and I post about it on X, if the players do something that happens to correspond with somebody else's campaign, hey, my players got Jace. They tried to get out of it rather than try to go towards the quest. They tried to get out of it by having somebody meet them along the way and trying to dispel the curse. And then there was I rolled up this random encounter table, and there was a winter wolf on there, or dire wolf on there. We determined, so I presented that as being Coyote's revenge for having undone his bond there. Then that's something that you could use in your campaign if this is still lingering in the background. And that's why we have this touch the shrine, get the quest, usually opt in, will not be resolved probably not until several weeks or maybe even months later.
Yeah.
So you can use the examples provided to you.
And it can be a loose thread. And down the road, either you can jump in on the meta DDG Stein, or you can have your own Steins in your. Because here's the thing: is these gods are still existing in their other realms outside. It's like an aspect of them has come into the Nexus. So you may
Right.
decide, okay, once Coyote has started this quest, you may decide I'm gonna go old school bro SR, and I'm gonna put a patron in charge of Coyote in my world, and let them make some decisions and stuff. Definitely communicate that and let's build this mythos. I love the idea of layered, almost like a planescape of actual real campaigns that are live and happening. And we don't have to read a bunch of background lore and stuff. We are creating that with each other and with the other campaigns of people that are playing along. So let me catch up with some of the chat here. Jacob says, I will throw a Coyote Shrine into Savmon. We will see if it has an effect on the Dragon Wars. Oh,
As we all
that
know,
sounds
the
awesome.
Native Americans rode dragons, drakes, and dinosaurs in the old days, so
Bradford Walker says, this reminds me that there need to be more priest classes in the game than cleric and druid. Would you consider monk to be somewhat of a priest class?
monk is a psionic class, I usually think of it as, but also kind of yes. The other important thing, I would posit that there are other priest, even if we didn't count monk, there would be others in the campaign that we could point to. The function of DDG turns most of your PCs into
Yeah.
possible like half priest if they opt into it. And more importantly, turn every demi-human, certainly every player option for demi-humans, into a kind of potential half priest.
Yeah, they may not all be clerics, but they will be parishioners, right? Like they will be the
Exactly.
congregation, the
And this
worshippers.
is how they interact with them. If you're playing as a dwarf in the campaign, and you're playing the domain game from level 1 as you should be, and you're setting up a grand hall in honor of your deities, there's going to be a shrine in there. We've described the shrine. We might even put some cost down on it, mentioning like, hey, this is how much treasure gets tithed to it or needs to be involved in its construction for whatever reason. If you're a dwarf who has a deity, who is a dwarf god, I don't really care what your particular class is, for whatever reason. If you're in there and you built it, you're going to touch that shrine at some point. You're going to
Yeah,
get a quest. And
yeah,
I think part of those rewards might be some kind of clerical spells.
yeah. And remember some of the rules for clerics. And I don't know how much they're followed, but like it is totally within the DM's purview if the cleric is asking for certain spells for the day. It is within the deity's abilities to offer different spells instead. Say no, on this day, here's what I'm giving you instead. I know you've asked for cure wounds or whatever, but here's what I want you to have today instead. And so hopefully this just gets a lot more people thinking about that aspect of the game, which can get sidelined. And again, with these old school role playing games, you don't know how much. There are load bearing rules that we have ejected in the name of convenience, and we don't know the second and third order effects of kicking them out. So hopefully bringing this back in, maybe alignment will start to make more sense to you. Maybe clerics will feel like not just a set of abilities, but will feel like a living, vibrant part of the world that gives you some rich role play. My guy, he's just a fighter, but I touched that thing and I said, oh, this looks like a coyote skull. And now I got gayest, and I don't know anything about that god. And now you've got a cleric that can be like, come, my son, let me explain to you the ways of the being which you have interacted with. Like it gives him a place, it gives him
Yeah.
a thing.
Then that's important because like this is the missing thing that's the missing thing that's missing. The thing that's missing from I think most of the Braunsteins and Brosar campaign play is a space for people who are not going to be able to participate long term, and a space for referees who are caught with important decision making opportunities that they would rather not handle themselves, but they're kind of forced into it.
Mm-hmm.
This is practice. You want to be able to, at a moment's notice, make a decision for a patron or a Braunstein player who is not there. You want to have some kind of procedures or not. This goes beyond procedures. These are models of
Yeah.
morality and models of alignment and decision. These are, the word I used last year, and this one I am sticking with, B-dubs, I'm sorry, is agendas. These gods have agendas. They have a rough model that you should be able to fall back on, as should all of your players and Braunstein players, to go back to and say, okay, if I don't have an immediate answer from whoever might be playing this creature, god, patron, whatever have you, I still have a rough idea of where they're going to go next. Coyote is going to mess with somebody.
Yeah.
In lieu of other directives, he's going to go do this.
Once he's in there, he's not going away, and that's going to be true of. So think well when you vote, right? How are you going to be complicating? Bradford Walker definitely feeling the zeitgeist on this. It says it's like a lot of us are coming onto the same ideas at the same time. I wrote about this last week at the clubhouse. Yeah, when we were talking about this, Rube and I, B-dubs and Crumb were also in their own back channel talking about this idea. Bradford's onto it. As I said, I don't know why my brain keeps letting go of this guy's name. Captain Janeway of Nod. Such a distinct, unique name. You'd think it wouldn't jump out of my head, except I got a million things going on right now in my life, so maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But anyway, we're excited about this. I'm not seeing too many questions in the chat. If you have further questions, maybe you're watching this after the fact, and if so, thanks for joining us. When you could, definitely follow. Let me put it across the bottom banner again. x.com/@deities_decrees, and that's where all of the polls will be coming out. That is your chance to affect which deities are going to make their way into the Nexus next, and who knows what impact that's going to have on all the campaigns that decide they want to play along. Again, we are hungry to see who's excited about this idea and who wants to open your campaign to these shenanigans. And yeah, I'm
should. We don't want you guys to miss out. Like, this is stuff that you need to learn as DMs, and it's stuff that I think is gone neglected for far too long. But this is the fourth core book of AD&D because it gives you the perfect mod. You don't have to do this stuff from the ground up on your own. Mm-hmm. You already have access to the tools. It's just a matter of getting,
If there are famous or notorious deities in your own campaign right now, I'm thinking of Dub Zerone and the great Cathaler. If you have ones where you're like, this is too much fun to keep to ourselves, send that to us as well. We'll put them in the rotation, and maybe we might need a little write-up from you. But it's open game. It's fair season. This stuff should be fun for all of us. And we hope you enjoy it. We hope you're geeked out like we are, and we hope it transforms your game in some way.
Yeah, it's a good last note. Do not get overly world buildery or tinker minded when it comes to I gotta have all my own pantheons. It's no, you can just put Saint Cuthbert, who was a real saint in the real world, into your game. You can just do that. You don't actually need to have this giant thing. I already have a bunch of deities. Going back to when I first started running my very first campaign, which was short. It happened in the same world as Eyes of the Forest, a really crappy novel that I finished back in 2019. It's been going on for years. I have my own deities. Pathfinder 2nd Edition has their own deities. The Pathfinder Pantheon is here. Maybe I change some names around when it comes to stuff that already exists in my world, but it's not really my world anymore. It's our campaign. Multiple DMs are running in it, right?
I'm glad you said that. Don't let
hold on tightly, let go lightly.
Yeah. Don't let this be a reason to get further into your prep addiction. Get some help. Stop it with the prep addiction. This is supposed to be fun and light and quick and gameable. Bradford Walker says, and remember that gods can and do lie. Just because that thing says he's Bob the Builder doesn't mean that he is.
Which, that's in an Appendix N book, and Jeffro used it in Appendix N. God, I usually bring up the Nine Princes in Amber thing, because that's a brilliantly written passage that sold me on it. But I never followed up on this book, and I should have. It's so good. Because Jeffro talks about in Appendix N, and we'll save this, I guess, for the full explanation for a different show, but he brings up how this one Appendix N book wraps in multiple pantheons. Odin disguises himself as Satan, Lucifer, to a witch. And she's like, I need the power to, I want you to kill these people for me, and I'll give you my soul. I'll sell my soul to you for taking care of this problem for me. He's like, nope, I'm not gonna buy your soul, but I will, if you're clever enough, give you the means to ensnare them, which is very in character for Odin.
Yeah.
And incredibly, and now I'm quoting Jeffro, because this is such a good passage, incredibly, the devil himself later shows up as a bunch of mounted knights are approaching her cabin, and she's going to be surrounded, and she's in fear, and she calls out the witch's cry into her fireplace, and a black spirit rises from the fireplace, a black flame, and she says, she's whimpering, weeping, because she doesn't recognize this thing exactly. It's not quite similar, but not quite identical to what she originally bargained with. And she's like, help me, she's whispering. He's like, why? It's like, well, because I sold my soul to you. It's like, mortals don't sell their souls to me. They give them over.
Yeah.
And he disappears as the knights are approaching.
Awesome.
It's magnificent.
Right on.
Excellent point, Bradford.
All right, guys. That's all from us. We'll give you the rest of your night back. Thanks for spending some time here, and get cracking. You know the duty. Until next time, I'm praying for you.